Well, throughout the Easter season, a question that I've been asking myself is, how did Jesus stay so calm in the midst of all he went through? It's like an emotional roller coaster. On one day, your best friend is betraying you, the rest of them are scattering, you're unfairly put to death the next day, and then a couple days later, all of a sudden you rise from the dead and you're back. You're surprising all the people that don't like you. Yeah, up and down, up and down. It's like a roller coaster. How did he, Jesus, stay at peace through all of that? Because when you read the gospel, when you read the story of what we just went through, Lent, Holy Week, Easter, it's like all over the place. But Jesus is just cool as a cucumber. He's taking it in stride. He is at peace. And so this is what I've been reflecting on. How did Jesus stay at peace through all of these ups and downs? Where does this peace come from? Well, I think everybody would say to themselves, church-going or not, peace is a good thing. You know, people with flags on the side of the road that say peace, bumper stickers. People like peace in the world, in their community, and inside themselves. Everyone is looking for peace. But I think if we took a poll, 100% of people would say, yeah, I'd like to be at peace. I'd like peace. I don't really think the same number would say, I have peace in my life, in my heart, in my community, in my world. And why is that? Why is there this experience of a lack of peace? What did Jesus have? Where was his peace coming from? Why was he able to be steady throughout the ups and downs? I go to St. Thomas, and you can walk through the university and you can see on people's faces one of two things. Either they are aware that there's a lack of peace in their life for the most part, you can kind of see it on their face, or they're trying to numb it out. They got headphones in, or they're on their phone, or they're doing something. And I fall into that just by self. If there's something up that I don't want to think about, throw those headphones on, those beats. But they're experiencing a lack of peace. They're trying to numb it out. And so here's my proposition tonight. Peace comes from what we lean on. It's like leaning. So, for example, in 2009, in my life, I would have been 6th grade. This was the Brett Favre year on the Vikings. I love the Vikings. And this was the good Brett Favre year, not the bad Brett Favre year. And so my peace came from how the Vikings were doing. And so it's like leaning. I'm leaning against the Vikings. And that year, 12-4, good record. And until the NFC Championship game that I'm not completely over yet, until that game, I was at peace most weeks. But as I'm leaning against the Vikings, when that gave out, so went my peace. I wouldn't lean against the Vikings. I would not lean against the Vikings for your peace. But I think the image stands true. You can ask anyone, what are you leaning against to find your peace in life? Is it your grades? Is it a certain friendship or a certain relationship to work out? Well, this is a big one. Other people's opinions of you? Is that where you find your peace? If people like me, or I think they like me, I'll have peace. And if they don't, I'll lose my peace. If you're leaning on anything other than God, it's a crutch. If we are leaning on anything other than Jesus, we will not have peace that lasts. That is so essential to understand. If you are depending on anything external to you other than God, all those things will eventually give out. And I'm not saying those external things are bad. If I'm really into like the political outcome or the sports outcome or other people's opinions, yeah, you should want other people to like you. Don't go around intentionally making them mad. And I want the Vikings to win like anyone else. Those aren't necessarily bad. But if your peace is leaning against that, all of a sudden you're giving that thing permission to determine your mood. to determine how you live your life. But Jesus, throughout Holy Week, he was calm as a cucumber. He's like a quarterback. He's under pressure in the pocket. He's standing there, delivers a calm pass. He loved until the end. He was at peace. And here's the key. Here's the whole point of this homily. Peace is not an absence of difficulty. I'm going to say it again. Peace is not getting rid of what's difficult in our life. A lot of the difficulties in our life we can't control. Peace is not an absence of hard things. Peace is Jesus in the difficulty. I see a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of struggles in people's lives. And honestly, every single person has struggles that they're going through, whether you see it or not. But I think what's beautiful is people are really made to endure a lot of suffering. They really have a large capacity if they know that they're not dealing with that suffering alone. If people believe they're alone in their difficulties, they can bear very little. They will give out. But the word gospel actually means good news. Here's the good news. You're not alone. You don't need to bear your difficulties alone. The peace comes from knowing Jesus is with you amidst your difficulties. That's what I'm leaning against. That is the most sturdy thing that we can put our weight up against, is Jesus. He says in the gospel today, "Behold, I am with you always, even into the end of time." That's peace that can't be taken away from you. If you answered that question at the beginning, man, do you want peace in your life? You're one of the 100%. You are not going to find it permanently outside of Jesus. It is only going to come from him. Peace needs to come from something dependable. And the only dependable thing, 100%, is Jesus. I'd like to conclude with a story that I think articulates this well. Last summer, I was blessed to be a chaplain in the hospital. And so I visited this gentleman and his wife on just a random Friday. And so when I went into the room, he's kind of, looking at his watch. He's waiting to get out of there. He's kind of on edge a little bit. He's like, this hospital trip really derailed my plans. I had these work things I was going to do, and I just can't wait to really get out of here. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Yeah, you want to go back home? I think I would too if I was in your situation. Talked to him a little bit. Asked him about faith, because I'm obviously the chaplain. And he's like, religion is a great societal, institution. I think it really helps people keep their spirits up. I was raised Catholic, but, I think Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, they all have something good to offer. And I was like, okay. It's like, how do you even, confront that? So I'm like, all right, well, do you want to pray a little bit? So I prayed with them, and I was on my way. Well, later that evening, I got a call from the priest at the hospital. And he was like, did you visit so-and-so today? And I'm like, yeah, I did. It's a pretty, normal visit. And he was like, why didn't you ask me to anoint him? Like, what are you talking about? He's just in for a little routine. He's like, no. He got news this afternoon that he has less than a week. His condition was at that level, and he didn't know it. And so he got this horrible news, and he called for a priest that afternoon to come and see him. And so Father Jaspers went and anointed him, and I'm like, oh, wow. That was just a very quick turn of events. He came in not knowing that this was just going to be his last trip in. And so that following Monday, I stopped into his room, and oh my gosh, complete 180. The vibe in the room was just tranquil. It was peace. And again, I'm asking myself, like with Jesus' situation, how is he cool as a cucumber? He just got the news that his life is probably going to be over in the next week on this earth. And so I'm just talking to him, asking him questions. He's totally at peace. He had received all the sacraments, Jesus with him amidst the difficulty. His mom and his wife were both there. They were pretty shook up. But he was in his bed, completely calm. And I asked him, I don't know where this came from, but I was like, are you ready? Are you ready to die? And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, I'm ready to see Jesus. And quite honestly, next week at this time, I'm excited to see my dad. My dad passed when I was in high school. I haven't seen him since. I'm so excited next week at this time to give him a hug. And I was like, oh, wow. That man found peace. That man knew in the midst of his difficult circumstances, he was cool. He knew Jesus was with him. He knew where he was going. Nothing, not even life-threatening news, could take his peace away from him. That's what God wants for us. Whether the Vikings win or lose. We'd like them to win, but our peace doesn't rest on those things. And so, my brothers and sisters, I just invite you today, reflect on what am I leaning on for peace that isn't God? And then in your prayer, invite, Lord, you see this thing that I'm leaning on for peace? Please, invite me to lean on you. Help me to lean on you, the only source of true peace. And you can rest assured he will answer that prayer.